Angela Rayner reportedly in talks to get rid of the scheme on new council houses, despite having used it to buy her own council house in Stockport. The scheme allows council tenants to buy homes from the local authority at a significant discount, sometimes up to 70%, and of course was introduced by Margaret Thatcher in 1980. But more than 100 local authorities have called for the government to axe right to buy. They say Britain's housing stock is in crisis and the scheme makes the problem worse. We would love your thoughts. Maybe you benefited from the right to buy scheme yourself. Do get in touch. Well, Anne, you start us on this. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think it's an almighty nerve from Angela Rayner, who actually benefited herself from the right to buy. But that aside, I'm very much in favour of the right to buy. Now, I was a vice-chairman of a housing committee on a local council at the time when this was introduced. And what we found was that people don't just come and go from council houses. By and large, people stay in council houses for a very, very long time, precisely because they can't go and buy in the private sector. And therefore, if you sold them that house at a discount, they were then the ones who were responsible for maintenance, etc., and there was actually a saving. Yeah, we are short of houses in this country. We are short of public sector housing. There's no doubt about that. That is an issue to be addressed in its own right. But I don't think that getting rid of the right to buy scheme is actually going to make that much difference.
What do you think, Marvyn? Because it's been sort of totemic scheme, hasn't it, for years now?
Yeah, I think the relationship with Angela Rayner and the actual scheme, there really isn't very much correlation between the two things. I think it's really important that when a scheme is available to somebody and she's able to maximise it, that's great for her at that time.
Yeah, but she might be against it.
But her doing her job now and actually looking at it and seeing what that's doing to housing stock is actually her doing her job. And I actually would prefer her to look at it again and be like, maybe it's not working for us as a whole. We are depleting housing stock for this country, council housing stock for this country. And it's really important that we need to look at it and potentially review something that's been in place before.
What about you could say, OK, let's carry on with right to buy, but just replace the houses when they're sold?
Well, I think adjusting the scheme could make it a much more long-lasting scheme that actually helps our overall problem that we have, which is housing stock. But I think also getting people on the ladder isn't really what it once was. And houses have become this massive financial instrument, which are barely affordable for most people anyway. And so it's not what it used to be 30, 40 years ago, where you bought your council house based on a relative amount to your income. And it actually then, yes, it went up in value, but it was about you living in that house. Now they've become investment products, and then they're not necessarily what they once were. So I think we should assess what they mean to people to have owning your house, and also how many houses do people need.
But people, understandably, Anne, are scared of renting in old age because all kinds of things can go wrong with that. The rent can rise, your pension doesn't rise. You're sort of trapped if you do that.
Trapped if you do what?
Or trapped if you are renting in old age on a fixed pension.
Well, if you're renting in the public sector, there are all sorts of discounts and
No, but I'm saying this is why we're obsessed with buying our own houses in this country. We've got an obsession.
Yes. I mean, I think that is very true. And I mean, I think people should buy their own houses and they should have something to pass on. I think it was a tremendous initiative. And amazingly, people still say to me now, decades later, oh, my parents were able to get their first home because of Mrs. Thatcher.
First home was the key word.
Yeah, Nick in Devon, what do you think about this? Should they abolish right to buy?
Oh, hi, Jeremy.
Hi.
Yes, I do think they should. I'm afraid I've got exactly the opposite point of view of Anne. I mean, like Anne, I was a member of the Housing Committee on my local authority. What I've got to say about it, when I first became a district councillor, what happened was that 6,000 houses, I believe it was at the time, I think, was owned by the local authority. Now it's less than 3,000. Yeah. The thing is, the people that are now living in those sort of bought council houses, I would say, certainly in my area, a majority of them owned by private landlords that are charging very, very high rates.
Well, this is the thing that they've been, I suppose the word is flipped, haven't they? So yes. A person buys them, they go up in value, they sell to a private landlord, they go off with the cash, they'll have to buy somewhere else to live, so it doesn't necessarily sort their problems out. But you're right, they're off the council's books now. But yes, is that a bad thing, Nick? Because then the council doesn't have to sort of run them and manage them.
Yeah.
Well, if you actually see how many people are on the list at the moment to own their own houses, and how many of them are sofa surfing or otherwise they're homeless, then you actually might think again. In fact, I mean, these figures have increased, and it's a misnomer to really think that the country has saved money because of it. It hasn't. It's cost us a flipping fortune.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks so much. Shelley in Newcastle, hello.
Hello.
What do you think?
I've lived in my house 30 years and I would still be living in it, so it would make no difference. I bought my house because my mum, who struggled to buy hers, unfortunately died a few years ago, so I was unable to buy my house. She always said, I wish you could buy your council house, but I still have a couple of my children at home in their 30s and 20s because they can't afford to buy anywhere of their own. So I still have a couple of my children living with us.
So you're living. Are you living in an ex-council house then, which you've purchased? Is that right?
Yes, I've been living in over 30 years, and like I say, I would still be living here if I didn't buy it. So it would make no difference because I'd still be living here.
Well, Marvyn, that's the argument for selling it, isn't it?
No, but then that's about someone like Shelley is the perfect example. Someone wants to buy the home that they're living in to live in it is completely different. So transferring that into this is my home is one thing, but then flipping it and then selling it for the profit to go and get another house at an inflated price is creating
but
this
flipping
overall
it wasn't
inflating.
sure, but that wasn't initially
the point she is making is that she would still be living in that whether she'd bought it or not. But it would be the council who would be having to maintain it.
Right, but that's for that particular case, yes. But for those people who are buying it and then flipping it to go get another house and taking that profit out and then going and buying another place somewhere else is what is inflating the overall property market for now. And I'm saying moving away from this instrument of these are things that I'm going to use as investment. I'm going to get a first one, a second one, I'm going to flip that and get another one is the kind of mentality which is causing this crisis in the first place. I don't know
whether that, I'm not sure whether that's the story with most of them. I mean, I suppose, and what it's done is it's moved a lot of stock from council ownership to private landlords.
And there's not enough regulation on those.
And that makes it harder for renters, no question.
I don't know that it makes it harder for renters because, if you're renting from the council or renting from a private landlord, I mean, it's the conditions of rent that actually matter. But as I've said, I think you can address the issue of a shortage of housing stock in its own right without taking away the right to buy.
Simon in Manchester, you are a landlord, I gather?
I am indeed. I have no right to buy. Mine were and I've sold some now, are all private.
OK, so are we... I mean, part of the problem with this is that we seem to think that private landlords aren't as good as renting out properties as councils. They're less generous. Maybe you disagree?
Yeah, I mean, Nick from Devon was right. He was absolutely bob on. A lot of ex-local authority properties, I think I read somewhere close, just under 50%, are now in the rights of landlords like myself. Wow. It is totally immoral. We should end it. The analogy I'd use is we're trying to fill up the bath with the plug out. We are not building enough social houses. We never will do because land prices are so high and we're selling the houses off so cheap at such a discount. It's economics 101. We cannot continue doing this.
What's your view on Angela Rayner then saying we're going to stop the right to buy?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Angela on this. I agree with Angela. Most of the time I don't with the Renters' Rights Bill. Obviously, I'm not a fan of that. But I'll be frank with you. If we don't end right to buy now for existing, not just new council houses, for existing, this will continue.
Mm-hmm. OK, thank you. We don't know exactly what Ms Rayner's policy is or will be, so this is all pie in the sky at the moment, but it's interesting if this is the way she's leaning. And you could understand it, Marvyn, because Labour would instinctively be thinking, as we've just heard, there's something immoral going on here.
Well, look, I think private landlords have had an ample amount of time to create safe and stable homes for the people that are using the house, and too much of it is based on the individual's perception on what they are responsible for and what they should be doing. So it has meant that there are really expensive homes that aren't necessarily safe, that aren't necessarily fit for purpose, and actually, relying on private stock is definitely not going to help us with our long-term planning. People need home security.
Sylvia in Durham, hi.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hey, Sylvia. Hey, what do you think?
Well, I agree everything what Anne said this morning, actually, which I don't normally, but I do today because I don't think that Angela Rayner has the right, and I do think it's two-faced to say one thing and then go on and do another. People do have the right to buy their properties. Most of them who buy have been in them for many, many years, and the only way they get on the ladder to secure themselves and their children is to buy their council house. So I do think that the Labour Party, who I voted for, have gone against the people, the very most vulnerable people of this country.
Really? You think so? You're already feeling like they've let you down?
Disgusted. I think I'm totally disgusted. If I knew what they were going to do, the way they've behaved over the last few weeks, I wouldn't have done it. And I've done it all my life. My parents did it. My grandparents did it. We're all Labour voters, but I wouldn't have done it.
I know we've talked before, and I would never have thought you'd be already feeling let down.
Oh.
So within weeks.
Pensioners,
Well, I know.
unions. Oh, come on.
OK, Sylvia, thank you. Very warning signs for Labour there.